Quick intro for Ashley. She is a 6-time Emmy nominee and 1-time winner for writing on Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. And she also stars in and co-wrote the HBO comedy series A Black Lady Sketch Show, which premiered last year. Season 2 is ordered and due to go into production post-COVID. So once everything is a little more back to normal. She's joining us today to discuss her writing process, advice for others in the creative field, kind of all the above, all the bread and butter of what Backstage is all about. But Ashley, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This is so cool to see so many faces.
Yeah, we got a good.
I haven't seen this many faces in like a month, so it's really exciting.
You were saying that you're quarantining with your dog, so that's the #1 face. And we're new guests to your life, yeah. But thanks for.
Yes, it's very cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not bad, not bad. Well, just for starters, how are you holding up? I know it's pretty crazy times. You work in an industry that is currently shut down. How's everything going?
You know, I think as well as it can be. I think it's a hard time for everybody, but my family's healthy and safe, so I feel like I can't really have any complaints on that. And the interesting thing that has happened, because the whole industry is shut down, like I feel like as artists, we always have times where we're not working. That's normal.
Mm-hmm.
But normally it's like one at a time. So you're not working, but your friends are working. They're announcing their exciting projects. And so because this is a moment where nobody is working, I found that people have been really connected, even though we are separated, because everybody has time to kind of slow down and connect with people, which has been pretty nice, actually.
Yeah. If nothing else, this is an opportunity to kind of recenter and to just be in the moment with things in a way that, especially in creative fields, it feels like you're flying by the seat of your pants sometimes. So you can just take a breather and recenter, recalibrate, and yeah. Well, I'm happy to hear that you're holding up okay, and I hope everyone out there today is also staying healthy and well. Ashley, have you managed to be working at all? Are you staying creatively engaged in any particular way during this time?
I am. I've been like really kind with myself. I think I went into this being like, well, there's no reason to leave quarantine without a movie written. And that's just like not how human brains and bodies work. So I have done some writing, but I've also done a lot of consuming because I had been back to back in writers' rooms for like years and working, you know, really long hours and really hard and not having that time to like read books or watch a lot of movies or even like just talk to my aunties and see what's going on in their life, because that's where all the good stuff comes from. So I've been like doing a combination of writing but also like consuming and sort of like refilling that pot.
That's great. And you say that you've been in writers' rooms for a string of years now. How is it that you first got into writing?
I always wanted to be an actor growing up as a kid. I was a little kid who was like obsessed with private practice. Which, I don't know if you know this, like very dark lawyer show. As a little kid, I was just like, that's what I want to do. And my parents were like, be a lawyer. And I was like, pretend to be a lawyer. But there weren't like role models for me to look at as actresses who looked like me. As a plus size Black woman. So I kind of thought I couldn't do that, but it was always what I wanted to do. And then, you know, I went to college for theater. I went to grad school. And while I was in grad school, my parents just like wanted to get me a Christmas present. And they bought me a class at the Second City. And I had never heard of it. I knew nothing of like sketch comedy. I had done improv in high school, but I didn't know that it was like anything other than like theater games. And when I went to Second City, if you want to get on stage, you have to write. Like the writers write all their own material. So the only reason I started writing was so that I could get on stage, and then kind of found that that was the part that I was better at. And I had one amazing teacher who I wrote a sketch that was so bad, it made her cry like actual tears in class. She like literally cried because my sketch was so bad. And she was just like, I don't know why you did this to us. This is so bad. Because it was like really sad and it wasn't funny. And then after class, she pulled me aside and she was like, you can make people feel things with your words. You are a writer. And it just didn't occur to me that like that was an option. I was like working so hard to become an actor in an industry that didn't feel like it wanted me. And then someone was just like, oh, you're a writer. And it just was like a changing moment in my life. And I started focusing more on writing. And then that actually did end up leading to acting. But it was just like a pivotal moment in my life that someone was just like, do this.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you definitely owe that teacher a bouquet of flowers or something. She kind of redirected you and put you on your path. That's great. Now, how from that, I feel like one of the most important things for writers today is to kind of find their perspective and learn how to be able to articulate that. How is it that you really zeroed in on first comedy, and then obviously with something like Samantha Bee, that's political comedy? How is it that you kind of found your niche in that?
I was really lucky that I sort of accidentally ended up at this second city, which is known as the Temple of Satire. For me, it was always comedy because just the way that I naturally process things tended to make people laugh. That was just like a natural part of me. And I was trying really hard to be like a serious, dramatic actress. And just when I stepped on stage, people laughed. Like it just wasn't happening for me. So it was sort of just like giving in and accepting what my gifts actually were instead of trying to like force myself into a different box. But also, I was always a person who was very politically engaged. Just like as a person of color, you sort of don't have an option not to be. Politics affects our lives so much more as women and as people of color. And so I noticed that like you could yell at people all day long, but if you make someone laugh, they'll actually sit and listen to you. And like I remember one time I did a show and there was a guy who was sitting like at the bar so I could like make eye contact with him during the show. And he started out like kind of, you know, with his arms crossed, leaned back, and I was like, oh, I don't have that dude on my side. And I told, you know, 15 minutes of jokes and I watched him get more and more engaged. Then afterwards, he came up to me and he was like, I was so prepared not to like you. I don't agree with you on anything, but damn girl, you are funny. And we sat down and we had a drink and we were able to have a conversation. It was just like, oh, if I can break the ice with laughter, I can actually communicate with people in a way that I wouldn't be able to otherwise.
Wow, yeah. And obviously, I mean, it goes without saying that these are very partisan times, and just even looking at this week's headlines, this is a time that political comedy is needed, not only as providing that perspective, but as a way of kind of digesting it and reaching across the aisle in a significant way. It's great that you've had the opportunity to provide to that dialogue, I think. Now, compare that to something like a Black Lady sketch show that's not always political. So what kind of parts of your brain are you using differently on that show versus something like Samantha Bee?
With Samantha Bee, everything starts with a headline, right? So any like idea that you have, you can't just be like, oh, here's something I thought would be funny. There has to be some sort of news hook to it. And so it was like taking the news and trying to find a new way to tell people about it that would make them laugh. And a lot of times the news is not funny. And so it's like a very difficult challenge. With Black Lady Sketch Show, nothing is political, nothing is topical. We really just got to start with, here's something that makes me laugh, or here's something that I think would make my mom laugh, or one of my girlfriends. Just really thinking like wanting to tell stories for and about Black women, the way that we relate to each other and to the world, and really coming more from a place of like what you wanted to share from your heart than like what was in the headlines.
Yeah. And aside from that, as you say, this also provided you the opportunity to act. And you first got into writing kind of as a backdoor to not seeing yourself on screen, not seeing roles for yourself on screen. So was part of the impetus for Black Lady Sketch Show to get in front of the camera and kind of sharpen your teeth there as well?
Well, I was on camera on Full Frontal, and so I think Robin B., who created Black Lady Sketch Show, and also is a good friend of mine, had like seen my work on Full Frontal, which is it's really interesting because to me, that kind of work is acting. We have to learn a lot of information. You have to know everything. And then you go off and you interview people and you're improvising with them and like trying to make things funny. on the fly while you're talking about politics with people, which usually makes people uncomfortable. So you're, you know, trying to like basically edit the piece in your mind while you're doing it. And I remember while I was on that show, I went on an audition. The casting director was like, "I'm so glad you came in. I didn't know you were an actor." And I was like, "I'm on TV every week." What do you mean? But people, when they see you like interviewing, they think you're a journalist or something. And I'm like, I know the answers to the questions. I'm acting like I don't, you know.
Right.
We did do character pieces there, but people like really didn't, I think, see it as acting. But Robin Thede saw that work and did understand it as acting and felt like I could do something like Black Lady Sketch Show. And what was really exciting to me was getting to play so many different characters in such a short period of time, and characters that I've always wanted to see. Like that invisible spy character was something that I've had in my back pocket for such a long time and would just look for any opportunity to get to do something like that. And so it was like all those characters that I had burning inside of me, because I was also a writer, I got to also write them and try to get them on screen.
It's so great, and I am such a fan of the show, and it's great to see you up there. And I know that season 2 was ordered. How far in that production process were you, or before all this happened, or were the wheels not quite turning yet?
We had not gone into production yet, so the season is written and it's ready for whenever Miss COVID is going to let us shoot it.
Got it. Okay. Well, yeah, excited to see that. Now, you had touched on before kind of the ways that you're spending your quarantine creatively. I'd love if, before we get into some audience questions here, just generally, a lot of people are saying that this time is the time that you can sharpen your skills as a creator, kind of hone in on certain things that needs polishing. What advice do you have for creators out there during this time to make the most of it?
I think, you know, I can only speak to my experience. So this advice isn't going to be for anyone, but I think for everyone, hopefully it'll be for someone, not no one. But I think if you can write, and if you're home right now and you have the time to, you should. There are so many characters that we like. I was even watching Apple TV last night. I didn't have that platform before. And I saw like they have huge stars. And I'm like, how did they get these huge stars on this new platform? And then when you watch the show, you're seeing them play different kind of characters they didn't get to play before. And it's like even these huge stars still have a type of character they want to play that they haven't gotten to yet. And so they're going over to this like brand new platform where they have that freedom. And so I think every actor has something that they know they can do that the industry may not invite them to do. And if you can write it, do it. Writing is really hard. Your first stuff is really going to suck, especially if you are an actor and you're used to reading good scripts. And then you look at your script and you're like, it doesn't look like that one. But it just takes time. It takes a long time to get from wherever you're starting to like the place where your script looks like the scripts that you're reading in audition rooms or whatever. But I think like if you can show someone, it's one thing to say like, oh, I have an idea and I know I can do it. But if you can show someone I have a script, it just opens up so many more doors and gets you in so many more rooms that you wouldn't have gotten in otherwise.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you said initially, like also don't be too hard on yourself during this time, like recenter and take care of yourself. But if you are going to be creative and want to flex those muscles, you also have nothing but time. So maybe spend some of it writing. I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the quick chit chat.
And no one, in my opinion, no one will.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, for me, no one will ever write as well for you as you will, because you know all these things are inside of you that nobody else could possibly know about. So even if you're still starting out as a writer, what you have to express about yourself is going to be really good once you get the technique and all that stuff in it.
And you know firsthand, of course, just looking to this latest project. You've been sitting on these characters for a while and you get to bring them to screen. Yeah. It's great. Awesome. Well, I'm going to open it up now for some audience questions. I see a number of people have already raised their hands. If you're new to this platform, you'll have the option in the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. That sends me a little notification, and we're just going to run through and see what we can get through for the rest of this time. And please be just respectful of everyone in the room, and especially of Ashley's time. Leave it to one question each so we can just kind of run down the list and make the most of it. And thank you again for joining us. First, I'll go to Danny DeVille. So Danny, you are off mute.
Hey, Ashley, how are you?
Hey, Danny.
Hey, I just actually wanted to ask a pretty simple question about writing in terms of when you kind of have a good flow, but say you might have something else to do and then you have to stop, or when you're like, oh, I have all this time to write, but for some reason things aren't quite connecting. So kind of like the adverse.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did you have more?
No, I think you got it.
I read Shonda Rhimes' book. I think it's called The Year of Yes. It's so good. And if you haven't read it, like run out and get it. It's really good. But she talks about writing in a really interesting way. She says it's like the writing is at the top of a hill and you have to like run to the top of the hill. And then once you get up there, you're in the flow and it's good, but you have to like get up there. And so she was like, every time my kid comes in the room and is like, Mom, look at this, I'm back at the bottom of the hill and I have to run back up again to get there. And so I think even just hearing that metaphor helped me give myself a little slack of knowing that like it is work to get into that flow. And if you're not in it, that's okay. But when I am in it, I treat it as like so precious and I try not to interrupt that time. And I try to write for as long as I'm in that space. And sometimes you are running out of time, like you have to go somewhere or, whatever. And what I'll do then is don't feel like I have to write perfectly and formatted, but get every single thing that's in my head on the paper, even if it's just like stream of consciousness, the curtains are blue in the room and she's crying and whatever, just so that I don't forget those details, so that when I go back and I have to run back up that hill again, when I get up there, I've left information for myself there. So I try not to stop when I'm in the flow, but I also try to be gentle with myself and do stop when I'm not in it. There are times where I sit down and I'm like, I don't have it. I'm gonna go make a snack or go for a walk or whatever. And just be honest with yourself that this is not the time, which you can do. I think if when the time is right, you really just buckle yourself down in that seat and try not to let anything interrupt you. I have a friend who I worked with on Bless This Mess, and he has 3 little kids. And he said that he's implemented a system where he puts a red dot, a yellow dot, or a green dot. And when he's writing, the dot is red and you can't come in the room. When the dot is yellow, you can come in but be quiet. And when the dot is green, then daddy's available for play. And I thought that was like a really interesting solution to like knowing this is not the moment to be interrupted. I'm in it.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Danny.
It was the year of yes, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank
it's really,
you.
Really good.
Yeah, if you're going to take advice from anyone, I feel like
Right.
Shonda Rhimes is a good one too, right? Let's shoot over
Yeah,
to...
she's done some good writing.
Yeah, a little bit, I should say so. Let's shoot over to Zitha St. Fleur. You are, hold on, unmuted. There you go.
Okay. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Zitha.
So my question, it began, well, first, like a Black lady sketch show is like so amazing. So it like inspired me, right? And it inspired me to kind of probably maybe make like a project or something and get like a group of like other Black women like me. But I kind of hit these roadblocks because I'm in college and I have, it's limited. It's like money, time. And then I also feel like I probably don't know as much people who would probably be as passionate about the project. So it's like, the question is like, how do I just get to probably just making it or something that's like inspired by this and then actually get it done while in college or like with these college resources?
Yes. So the plus side to college is you have a lot of resources you won't have again for a while. So like, depending on where you go to school, you might be able to check out cameras, you might be able to check to get theater space, all that kind of stuff. Outside of college, those things get very expensive and difficult to access. So definitely you're doing the right thing by like taking advantage of this time. What I found, and this is like a slightly shady answer, but it was true for me, is that a lot of people who want to act or do comedy or any of these things don't want to do a lot of work. And so if you are willing to be the person who does all the work, it's very easy to get people to join on with you.
Okay.
So what I would do is say, we're going to do a show. We're going to invite all of these. Me and my girlfriend, when we were in Chicago, we stole a list of contact information of casting directors and agents in Chicago, and we put on a show. And I told everyone, I was like the least cool person in that group of people. And it's like, I will rent the theater. I will make the flyers. I will do every single bit of work. And all you have to do is show up and be funny. And all these casting directors and agents will be there. If that's the deal, people will show up.
Okay.
It's tough because if you're the person who has to do all the producing work on top of all your creative work, it just takes that much more time. And I feel like at that time when I was trying to build my career, I was doing all of this producing work in order to get on stage. And my friends who were like, just, I don't know, cooler, more popular, were able to just get on stage. So they did more shows than me. But I learned every aspect of the business so that when I did eventually get to that point, I had so much skills and knowledge from producing my own work. So it can be daunting to say to someone, if you do all the production, people probably will show up to work with you because that means you have to do all that work. But you also get so much out of it. And like when I got to Full Frontal, which was my first TV job, we produced a lot of our own pieces there. And so I wasn't like doing that work for the very first time. It was different work in television than in theater, but like I had a sense of confidence about myself because I had produced so many stage shows before I got there that I was like, oh, I could probably figure out how to do this. So I think it's really valuable, as well as being able to trick people into doing your projects.
Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you. Next question, we're going to go over to Amanda. Amanda, you're off mute.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Amanda.
I was just wondering, since you're a Second City alum, are there any writing classes that you took there that you found really strengthened your work?
I did a program there that I don't think exists anymore, but they had a directing program and there was a writing component to that. And that was where I met my teacher, Mary, that I talked about and where I learned to write. I taught in their writing program there in Chicago for years. And I think it's excellent because every school has their own program. I think they're all great. But what I liked about the Second City was the order of the way they introduce you to concepts. And it really helps you build every piece of the skill. And then so at the end of the program in level 6, you write your own show. But it's very easy for you to do that if you've gone through the first 6 levels. So I really like the way their program is organized and the curriculum of it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Next up, we're going to go to Isaac Nunez. You are off mute.
Hey, Amanda, how are you? Ashley, I'm sorry. Ashley, how are you? Yeah. Question for you, I guess, what is like the number one advice for yourself that you give to yourself all the time?
I'm distracted because I really like your t-shirts. I'm going to say that first.
Okay.
That's great. Two things. One, when I was applying to Full Frontal, I did the first round of packets and then they asked for a second packet. And then I was like, oh no, I might actually get this job. And I had a panic attack about the idea of like moving to New York. I ended up having, I think, 2 weeks to move from LA to New York for that job. And I was like freaking out. And my friend Nikki said, every challenge you've ever had, you've lived through. And it was just such a profound thing to be like, oh, I've never failed myself before. I failed a lot, but I've never failed myself. And so every time I have a next level thing where I'm like, oh no, I don't know if like I'm writing my first feature right now and I've only written half hour before. Before I wrote half hour, I had only written sketch. So the scripts are just getting longer, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to write a feature. And then I remind myself, you know, what Nikki told me, I've never failed myself before. If I could do all the things that came before, then I can do this next thing. So that's one thing. And also I decided that I think I'm funny. And and I know that sounds silly, but a lot of times, like if you just have something that you know works and that you know it's good, and you have close friends and trusted advisors who tell you it's good, and the industry may not agree for a long time, and you just have to hold on to your heart that like, I know that I'm right. And I know that if I was wrong, my mom would tell me, and I'm just going to hold on to that feeling until I figure out the right way to package it to get it to where everybody agrees.
Gotcha. So just stay true to you, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything else will align itself accordingly.
Pretty classic advice, but I think it works.
I like that. I just like to always get an insight. I mean, congratulations on all your success.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you, Isaac.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, Isaac, thank you. Next up, let's go over to Emily Hill. Emily, you're off mute.
Hello?
Oh, hi, Emily.
Sorry, I'm trying to decide between questions. This is a little off topic, but a lot of my topical questions have been answered. Can we get like the inside scoop on your conversation with Elizabeth Warren?
I mean, there isn't much of one. She's a perfect human being. She's very kind. And so for people who don't know, I had tweeted, just like as a joke, everyone was talking about all of these plans that Elizabeth Warren had, and her plans were like so specific. Like she had a plan for like Black women's maternity health care, not just healthcare, maternity health care. It was just so much. And so as a joke, I tweeted, do you think Elizabeth Warren has a plan for my love life? And she responded and said, DM me and we'll talk about it. And I just thought that was the funniest joke. I was like, what a great joke. Good for her. She told a good joke. And to me, that was the end of it. And then she actually DM'd me and asked for my phone number and called me. And of course I get on the phone and I'm like, hello, Senator, let's talk about the campaign. Here are my concerns as a Black millennial. And she's like, oh, let's talk about your love life. Like she actually wanted to hear what was going on in my love life. So I did tell her about a crush I had at the time. And her advice to me was to like, very similar actually to my advice to Isaac, lead from what you have going for you instead of leading from a place of like, I want this, lead from a place of like, look at all these amazing things I've done. Anyone would be so lucky. And it was good advice. I was shocked that she wanted to talk about that while I was trying to talk to her about her amazing presidential campaign.
Cool. Yeah, I thought that was so funny that she actually had a like legit response. That's really neat.
Yeah, and that she had an actual sense of humor, which I think is like so lacking in politicians and so refreshing.
For sure. Cool, thank you.
All right, thanks, Emily. That's such a good story. I love it. Next, we're going to go over to Jerrica. Jerrica, you are off mute.
Okay. Hi, Ashley. First of all, I love you so much, and you are killing it for Black women in comedy. So my question is this. I've worked as an assistant support staff on like 5 different shows, and I don't want to be an assistant anymore. I kind of want to focus on trying to get staffed. And so I was just curious if you had any tips or ideas or anything that I can do, because I'm a writer performer and I kind of just want to write now.
Yeah. So have you been a writer's assistant? Like what positions have you had?
I've done every job. I've done office. I've done all the PA job, writer assistant, script coordinator, showrunner's assistant, all of that.
Okay, so what you have now are a ton of connections, which is great, right? All those people that you worked for, and then also the other writers and assistants who were around. And I think now you've given them your labor as an assistant. It's fine to be like, can you read my script? Like I worked for a season for you as an assistant. Asking you to read a hour-long script is not a crazy ask. And I think this is really hard advice to give and probably to take. Now that you know that you're done, you have to be done. And when you get the next phone call and someone says, will you come be an assistant? You kind of have to say, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm a writer. And that's really tough because it's turning away money, which none of us want to do and often can't afford to do. But I think that people are going to keep you in that position as long as they can, because now that you've been an assistant for so long, you're extremely knowledgeable, right? So they're getting 2 for the price of 1. They're getting a writer and an assistant rate, basically. So I think at a certain point, you just have to say, you know, I'm a writer. I would love it if you would read my script. I do know writers assistants sometimes will say like, or script coordinators, I'll come on as your script coordinator if I can have a script in the season. That's a good stepping stone. But I think with all the experience you have, you're in a strong position to kind of stand up for yourself a little bit and say, I want more. If you can't hire me as a writer, can I at least get a script? Can I at least get a guarantee from you that you're going to read my script and give me some mentorship? Because I've been an assistant for a long time and I'm ready to write.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. Next up, we're going to go to Courtney Dominique. Courtney, you are off mute.
Hi, Ashley.
Courtney.
So, question for you. I'm an actress performer, and I have a script idea for a Black lady sketch show. What would be the best way to get that script idea to show producers, and what's the best way to stay in contact?
Really, the only way to have a script idea for a show is to write on that show. There's a lot of like legal reasons why people can't accept script ideas. Even sometimes there have been times where a writer in the room has an idea and they're like, oh no, I remember that someone had this idea once and now you can't write it, because shows are just like so afraid of being accused of stealing material. So most shows are not going to accept a show idea from anyone other than the writers who are hired to be in that room. My suggestion would be to go ahead and write that sketch and have that script as a calling card. If you do want to get a writing job, having, you know, usually you would have a half-hour sitcom pilot to sort of get writing jobs. But if you want to write sketch and variety, having a packet of 5 great sketches is totally reasonable. And if you know, showing those people, getting people to read them, trying to get a writing job. If you don't want to get a writing job and you want to be an actor, then go ahead and write that sketch, shoot it on an iPhone, put it up. Someone seeing a great sketch that's maybe even not shot the best, but super funny will, I think, open so many more doors than having an idea, because people just legally can't accept ideas anyway.
Got it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Courtney. Next up, let's go to Charles Lewis. Charles, you're off mute.
Wow, you got me. All right, great. Hey, Ashley, how are you?
Hi, Charles.
Okay, so I didn't expect to get picked, so like I'm definitely gonna get a lotto ticket today. So I do have a question. I would say that I'm not necessarily a writer. I've been writing different sketches for the past like 2 years, and I just don't know how to, I guess, condense it enough to, I don't know how to say this, but I was inspired by a show, Atlanta, and I decided to come up with a spinoff or something for a different location in a different state, and just specifying on how it would look. So I just want to know, how would I be to, sorry, I don't know how to say this. How would I be able to, basically, how could you write your first script? Because I really haven't really done that.
I think, so you really like Atlanta.
Yes.
I would watch the pilot of Atlanta like 5 times in a row. Watch it so many times that you're not even enjoying it anymore, and you can start to notice the structure of it. And then most scripts that are that popular, you can find a PDF of the script online if you look for it. And then honestly, like for your first one, pick a pilot that you really like Atlanta, and borrow their structure. So break down what's happening in each scene. In this scene, they're introducing us to this character. In this scene, they're telling us what his problem is. In this scene, they're showing us the world. You know, break that down in a spreadsheet on one side, and then on the other side, take your story and just plug that in. Okay, I'm gonna introduce this character here. I'm gonna introduce this different conflict, that's my conflict for my show here. I'm gonna show the world of this different location I'm in. And just write that script so that you can get the feel of what that structure actually looks like and what it is to write a script. And you can just kind of borrow that structure for your first time. And then, you know, as you get better at it, you won't do that anymore, but that's a really good way to like learn structure.
Thank you so much. That's gold. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's great. Good luck, Charles.
Thank you.
We are going to go over to Charlie Rhea now. Charlie? Well, there you go. You're off mute. Yep.
Hi. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Really appreciate it. So my question is, do you believe that your experience in acting is like giving you a deeper understanding of how to kind of dig deep into a character, like when you're creating one, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think for me, it's almost the opposite. I did an acting program in high school and in college. Like I knew how to act, but when I learned how to write, I feel like I became a better actor because I learned how to analyze the script and figure out why a character is doing what they're doing in the moment. There's two versions of that. One is their internal motivation, you know, so like what happened before and why am I motivated to do this because of my feelings, but also why did the writer put this here structurally? I found that like understanding both made me a better actor.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Charlie. We are going to go over to Vanessa Wilson. Vanessa, you're almost off mute. Hold on. Let's see. There you go.
There? Oh.
Yep.
Hi, Ashley.
Hello.
Hi, I was wondering, how do you deal with rejection in like an industry where it's very like common?
Yeah, such a good question. I think I figured it out. Much better at industry rejection than like dating rejection. So what I do is always have another thing on deck to sort of trick myself into moving my focus there. So like when I was applying to be on Full Frontal, I was also applying to Larry Wilmore's show. So the moment that I sent in my materials for Full Frontal, I started shooting my correspondent audition video for Larry Wilmore. So I wasn't sitting waiting what Full Frontal was going to say to me. I was already working on something else. And I try to do that with everything. Auditions are a little bit harder because you're not like in charge of when they come. Like you can always have another writing project in your back pocket, but auditions you're not in charge of them. What changed for me, I used to be pretty bad at auditioning because I really wanted the part, and that was all that was happening in my body the whole time, was wanting the part, and that's not what that character was meant to be doing in that moment. And I thought, like, why is it that I'm so good at shows, even shows that are like super high pressure, shows that producers come to, I can still have a good show because I want to communicate with and entertain the audience, and I'm not wanting them to give me something. I'm trying to give them something. So I decided to reframe auditions for myself. Not having a good audition doesn't mean getting the part. It means putting on a good show. And if by the end of that audition, I feel like I put on a performance as good as I would on stage at the Second City, then I'm going to be happy with myself. And I got much better at audition. And I didn't necessarily book more, but like I got better about it. I felt better about it. And I would truly like have people crying, laughing, and then not get the role, which like really goes to show you that it isn't always about what you do in the room. Sometimes someone comes in who looks like someone's crush from high school and they're gonna get the part, you know what I mean? But I felt like if I put on a good show, then I could feel good about myself and not worry about whether or not I got it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Vanessa. Next up, we're going to go to Dianna Montero. Dianna? 1 second. There you go. You're off mute.
Hi, Ashley. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine. Another Black plus lady here. So unite.
Looking all kinds of cute in your earrings.
Hey, I do a little something. Anyway, but one of the things that's going to go down for me as classic, or two, is when you were proposed to and Cheryl Lee Ralph and Larry Wilmore played your parents, and it was this big elaborate dance piece and everything, which was brilliant, and also the Patti LaBelle scene. Where do you take part in writing your own sketches, and if so, what's the inspiration, but what's the idea behind them?
I did actually write both of those sketches.
Oh, okay.
The
Brilliant, by the
proposal,
way. Brilliant.
The proposal one I pitched in my job interview to Robin and Issa. And then the Patti LaBelle one I pitched first day, first pitch in the writer's rooms. It was just like, this is very weird. And if you're cool with me being this weird, we're gonna have a good time. I think the proposal one, I had that idea because I watched one of those viral proposals that you always see online where the guy's like surprising a girl, you know, in front of this big group of people. And because I'm broken inside, I watched this beautiful display of love and I was like, what if she says no? Like, it was just immediately funny to me, the idea that like, her answer is so no that she would say no in front of all of these people. Right. And as soon as I had that idea, most of the sketch kind of came to me immediately. Because like, it was like, I'm gonna say no, there has to be a reason. What's the reason this guy is not the guy? Why isn't he the guy? He's kind of a deadbeat. He doesn't like return text messages on time. His fingernails are always dirty. All of those jokes just came from like knowing how two people could be on such opposite pages, which was very funny to me. Right. The Patti LaBelle one, I get a lot of sketch ideas from listening to music, because to me, a lot of times ideas come from an emotion, and then it's like, who's a person that would be feeling this emotion? And then from there comes character and then story. And so that Patti LaBelle song, I was driving down the street and I heard it and I was like, this is the most dramatic song I've ever heard. It's the ultimate breakup song. It tells such a story. And then I just thought like, oh, this would be the kind of song that you would listen to every time you broke up. And then just the comedic version of that is Patti LaBelle magically appears every time she breaks up.
With backup
singers. So it's just taking like a normal thought of like, what if I listened to this song every time I broke up, which every woman does, and taking it to the realm of comedy by being like, what if Patti LaBelle shows up every time this woman breaks up? And then also she's not happy to see her, which is instantly funny because there's not a person on earth who wouldn't be happy to see Patti LaBelle. Right. So a character who is the one person who's not happy to see Miss Patti is like instantly funny to me.
Yeah. Thank you for another real quick comment. Thank you for representing us like outstanding. Just
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Diana. And those were some of my favorite sketches as well. They're so great. Let's go over to Grace for a question. Gonna unmute, and you are unmuted.
Hi, Ashley.
Hello.
What is your advice to a young person who's like in school, who's trying to make it into writing?
You're in college?
No, I mean like, I live in the UK, so my age would probably be equivalent to like high school.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
I think just start writing, you know, like I think a lot of people want to be writers, but of the people who want to be writers, probably 50% of them have a script they've written, and probably only 25% of them have 5 scripts they've written. So if you're one of those 5 script people, you're already so far ahead of the pack when you get wherever you're going. So I think, you know, just write, look at things that you like and figure out what you like about it and try to write like that. Write. Now you can, if you're in school, you can write a sketch and have your friends put it up on stage or shoot it, put it on the internet. These really short, like less than a minute funny videos do incredibly well online. And if it doesn't do well online, you learn from that too. But I think performing on stage and or putting your stuff up online is the best way to learn. There's nothing that will teach you faster than standing on stage and not being laughed at. It is the worst feeling in the world, but it certainly improves your writing very quickly. So as much as you can put your stuff in front of people, try things out and be okay when sometimes those things fail. I think it just speeds up your learning process so much more. So then when you graduate, you will be so far ahead of the other people.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Grace. Next, let's go to Kayla Esmond. Gonna unmute you here, and you're good to go.
Hello. Thank you so much for doing this. Big fan of yours all the way back to cute.
Thank you. That's a deep cut.
Oh, I'm trying not to take up too much time, but I love it. I'm a stand-up and I work in politics, and long term I would love to work in something like Late Night with Samantha Bee, and I'm using this time to work on my writer's packets. I was wondering what that first writer's packet looked like, if there was something specific that you think kind of set you apart to get you to that second one, and what that second packet looked like.
Oh, that's a really good question. So for people who don't know, like late night packets, every show when they're looking for writers will send out a packet and ask writers to write a certain number of things and send it back. And that's kind of like the first round of getting a writing job on a late night show. Every show does it differently. There's no standardized thing. But if you know that there's a host that you want to write for, like if you know you want to write for Samantha, what I did was I would get the newspaper and pick 10 headlines and write those jokes every day. Because when that packet comes, it's going to be asking you for stuff that you wrote that week. So you can't like really have pre-done your packet. They make it so that that's not possible. You have to write about the news of the week. So, but you be doing that the whole time so that when it comes, you're really good at very quickly writing it. So they've actually changed the rules and packets are much shorter now. But when I did my packet for Sam B, the first packet was 25 pages long and I had 3 days to write it. So I could only write 25 pages in 3 days because I had been writing a lot up until that time and was like, had a lot of practice at it. Typically they're going to ask you to do the kinds of segments they do on that show. So on Sam B, it's going to be 2 headlines and a field piece. On Jimmy Fallon, they do desk games and those bits with celebrities and stuff like that. Courtney does carpool karaoke. So it's like whatever they do on that show, they're going to ask you to write a couple of examples of those. So it's like be practicing those. And I think what made my packet stand out, when I've read other people's packets, it's a very specific combination of, you know, the host voice. And when you read the joke, you can hear that person saying it in the cadence they would say it and with the attitude they would have about it, and you know their politics. But the writer still shows you their point of view, but within the host voice. So you could read the funniest packet in the world, but if those are not jokes your host could say, like if all of my jokes were like very Black, Samantha can't say those things, so I'm not going to get that job. You know what I mean? But in the stories that I selected to write about, it did show that I care about issues that happen to people of color. Samantha cares about those things too. So it shows that my point of view can fit with hers, and that her saying jokes that I wrote will feel natural to her, but I will bring something different to the show that they don't already have, which I think a lot of times is your point of view, what you care about, what's politically important to you. So it's finding that balance between, I really think the story selection shows them your point of view, and then the voice shows that you can write for that host.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's all so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kayla. We're going to take 2 more questions to round out the hour. We're going to go to first Elise Freeman and then Siana India, just so you know who's on deck. Elise, you are good to go.
Hi. Yes,
Hi, Elise.
making sure my microphone works. Hi. I'm actually a performer, improv. I do a lot of improv work. And I also write on my own time, but most of the writing I do is long. It takes a long time. It's plays, it's stories, it's narrative like that. And I was wondering, was there a shift for you? Because you started out with sketch, you started out with very quick writing. And very fast turnaround for sketch, and for television is a very fast-paced world. Now that you're moving into slower projects, that jump feels probably easier, but I was wondering how you make a distinction between projects that take more time versus scaling down. How do you get faster?
Yeah, it was a difficult transition. I started out fast, so it was difficult to transition to doing things that take longer. To me, the faster writing is easier because you get feedback quicker. So if you write a sketch, it takes you, let's say, a week to write a sketch. You can have a friend read it. They can tell you if it's good or if it's bad. You can edit it, you know, whatever. and you get that immediate feedback. So then when you go to write the next one, you've learned those lessons. It's much harder if you like take a year to write a script and then you finally get some feedback. So I think, to me, the thing is two things: building in feedback, having your like trusted circle of people who read your stuff, and sort of releasing the preciousness when you are writing monologue. I mean, we write monologue, you can literally write something that goes on TV that day. There were certainly days where I was in the makeup chair writing the script that I was going to go shoot, that was going to be on television the next day. That to me is actually easier because you're getting feedback immediately. So if you're writing alone and you don't have that feedback built in of being on a show, create a group of people who give it to you. And that also creates deadlines. If you tell your friend, I'm going to send you a script on Wednesday, then it kind of forces you to just go ahead and send whatever you have on Wednesday and get that feedback. And then also you want to do the same for them, so you're not like a drag on them. For me, writing longer projects, what has helped a lot is outlining more. A sketch, because I've been writing sketch for so long, I can get a whole sketch idea. Like if I have an idea for a sketch, I know the beginning, middle, and end and what's going to happen in all 5 to 7 pages of that script. That's obviously not possible for a half-hour show or a movie. And so I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't like to outline, but really having a really strong outline for me has helped it, so that if I'm writing the third act of this thing 2 months after I wrote the first act, I know where I'm going and it still all coheres, because before I did any of that, I thought through with great detail what the entire thing was going to be.
Thank you so much. You're fantastic. Big
Thank
fan.
you.
Awesome. Thank you, Elise. And to round things out, let's go to Siana India. 1 second. You are off mute.
Hey, Ashley, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Neighbors are being loud, so I think it's wonderful that you're here, and today is a crazy day that you're here because you said you talk about, comedy and politics together, and Floyd, Gregory Floyd is in the news right now, and I know that's about to pop up on some late night shows. So I'm just kind of curious, when it comes to like really controversial topics like that, how do you pitch it to, production companies and studios? Like, do they give you a lot of pushback, or how do you go about not like disrespecting the community and when it comes to that kind of thing?
Yeah, controversial is not a problem in late night. Like everything you talk about is going to be controversial, and that's the nature of it. So rarely is anyone going to be like, oh, it's too controversial. No, but painful. There are just some things that aren't funny or that will be too painful for the audience to hear a joke about. So it was always a consideration. I remember there was one story that was about child abuse that we really tried to get on the air because it was really important and we wanted people to know about it. And it wasn't a widely known story. And we talked about it for months and we just could not come up with a joke about it. It wasn't funny and it didn't go on the show. So I think it's not so much about worrying about controversy. It's worrying about, you always want to be making fun of the right people, which are the people who are in charge and the people who are doing harm, if they are, and you always want to be comforting the right people, which are the people who are hurt by the thing. And so it becomes a question of, is there a way to comfort this group of people using comedy? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. And you just have to be, it's not difficult to be sensitive about that, because like as a human being, you have your own feelings, and when you're talking about it, you're like, this is not funny to me. Or like comedians laugh at a lot of things that normal people don't laugh at, and sometimes you have to be like, oh, this is for us, we're very dark people, this should not be for public consumption. But there are also a lot of things where you're like, also as a group of humans, we know this isn't funny and we're not gonna try to make it.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for the question. And I just want to say thank you everyone for such great questions this last hour. And especially thank you to Ashley for joining us. I was fielding DMs in our chats the whole time, and people were really thrilled with the advice and insight that you're able to offer. So I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with us. Before we get going here, is there anything that you'd like to leave us with, just to wrap things up?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you. This was so great. It's so nice to talk to humans. I've been quarantined with a dog, so thank you all for talking to me. Yeah, I think if you are sitting home, if you have some free time, write a sketch. It doesn't take very long, and if it's bad, you don't have to let anyone read it. But it'll feel good to have completed it, I promise.
Awesome. And with that, I thank you again, and we will be back tomorrow. We have a Zoom session with talent agents from Paradigm Talent Agency tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, and it's going to be the same type deal with this interview and audience Q&A platform. So hope to see our audience of actors and creators there. Ashley, thanks so much. Stay healthy and take care of yourself out there, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.